Oh man, this is a taste of what's yet to come. And don't take it literally. Welcome back to another chapter of Trials of a King. Last time, Cecil and Rosa have actually encountered a new race in the blue planet that they have never encountered before. They were known as the Injukhal, and technically they're like redskins. And apparently they live in a town, or rather an island known as Tenebre, which is at the center of the archipelago. And if you use the Enterprise, you would see an archipelago to the far east, which also has to have Basidia to the south, Babul in the north, and Mithril somewhere in the center. But it's a little further inward than that. So I kind of made up this location in the tribe itself. But they are gonna do something very peculiar. You'll see why. Chapter 2. By the time they landed just a couple feet from a large forest at the island's center, it was nearly dusk. While Dragon Rose led Cecil and Rosa through the thick woods, she explained about her captors. They were rebels who tired from her father's rule, and their leader is Domin. He was once a well-respected disciple of the Injukhal and was expected to be the next clan leader. But then he turned corrupt, as did some of his people. He always wanted the tribe for himself, and he sent the 4 red men to abduct and even kill her, so he could have the advantage. All he wants is for his people to follow his lead, or perish. The royals felt sorry for her fate and her tribes, and they promised to aid her father in this silent civil war. Soon they emerged, and with a torch in hand she pointed out her camp. A huge ring of teepees surrounded a small bonfire, causing them to glow in a smooth orange hue. Cecil and Rosa were aghast. They never saw such tribal signs and objects. There were many totem poles, both tall and short, facing the pale travelers. And so were the redskins. Everyone went silent. Some were mute, some muttered in strange tongues. "Wait here. I shall bring my father out to you. He will understand why you're here. Please stay a moment," they obliged as she ran to the monstrous tent, hardly seen by all the clutter. During the 5-minute wait, the Injukhal were inspecting them, some even being rude to Rosa as they sneered and teased her hair and dress. From the center loomed a huge shadow. A tall Injun emerged, and his people grew silent again. He had a long head-dress, which consisted of feathers from zoos, cockatrices, helldivers, and chocobos, from the outside in. The dress was elaborate and large, showing his might and authority. It had an arching design from black and then fading to brown to tan to white. As he stood still, looking at Cecil and Rosa, they bowed down. "Rise, rise. I'm so happy of you foot soldiers for saving my only daughter's life. You two are courageous and very noble. She told me you're the honorable king and queen from Baron." "Yes, my lord." "Ah, so young and valiant, like a true warrior. And it seems you're the one of light, I presume." His eyes narrowed. "For so long we've been living in terror and chaos. Our lives were always shrouded with danger as more monsters invaded our land. The blood moon was upon us, and we had nowhere else to run. Many died defending what was ours, so we've decided to hide underground. Few of us emerged into the sun gathering our bearings, yet we still suffered from disease, famine, and death. Thus I'd made a prophecy that a noble man shall vanquish all the fear and war, and restore the moon from its crimson corruption." On Cecil's shoulder, the chief laid its wooden staff and smiled. The paladin's face lowered. "You, son, are the warrior of light, who brought peace back to my people." He raised the staff overhead as he cried, "Let us rejoice this night with our new-found heroes. The warrior and the healer may join us and become one of our brethren." Everyone cheered, and Abdullah escorted them through the ecstatic crowd to where the bonfire glowed the village. As they sat beside him on warm cushions, drums were heard, making a subtle beat, which is what you've heard. The Injukhal gathered around, sat and crossed their legs close to their bodies. Cecil followed suit while Rosa's remained elongated. While Abdullah continued his appreciation, Dragon Rose hid deeply in the shadows outside of the village. With him under your control and separated from his beloved, he shall be easy to manipulate. Give him all your sultry charm. Of course, chieftain, she replied with no trace of objection. You'll find out soon enough. By the time she laid a thick hairband on her head, the ceremony began. People roared and stomped to the heavy rhythm of the tom-toms. The chief watched proudly as the tension increased. Rosa, however, wasn't so relaxed, and Cecil had that strange sensation again. His head became foggy, his body turned numb. He fixed onto the beating drums and the crowd dancing with pure delight. Then he began to have a pull on his mind. Rosa's paranoia was shown as she saw Dragon Rose facing Cecil, beckoning him to come over. The gold hairband had a head of a metallic dragon, its lips curling in a sinister grin. While its eyes were flashing, her sleek hair shined as did her exotic tiara. She also wore a thin beige stringy dress reaching just inches beneath her legs. The lashes, ruby lips, and necklace consisting various feathers gleamed as she smiled. Cecil couldn't resist any longer. It was as if she was echoing into his mind to join her, and the drums intensified the infatuation. Slowly he rose and walked to her with an expressionless face. Rosa reached a hand to him, trying to halt his progress. Cecil, what's gotten into you? They don't need us to save their kind. They're only using you, and so is Dragon Rose. We must leave. He jerked her hand away and responded in a monotonous tone. There's no need for concern, Rosa. Dragon Rose waits for me. I must go to her. As if on cue, the chief nodded his approval. Cecil met up with the princess, leaving Rosa all alone, and he was completely mesmerized. All he felt was his heart racing and his breath and body heaving as he watched her perform on a circular platform similar to a tom-tom. He watched her as she spun, twisted, and spread her arms as if they were wings. Her dress moved elegantly as she lowered her knees close to the ground and risen again. She moved in time with the hammering beat, and Cecil became more aroused. In fact, she gestured him to step onto the platform. Then he mimicked her. Rosa couldn't stand the treacherous sight any longer. She immediately stormed to them until a redskin stopped her. He grabbed her lower arm with his massive hand and ordered, Get some firewood, white witch! From all the chaos she reluctantly obliged. Cecil didn't even notice her being bullied or when she left. What mattered was Dragon Rose's body, as he felt her strong skin over her dress, her strong shoulders and her cheeks as they intertwined. His fine hair, broad shoulders, and hard chest made her heart fly. Then she grabbed his hands as they moved in sync. Rosa nearly dropped her load as she can't believe her eyes. How can Cecil betray her like this? She felt scorned, but the harasser interfered again. Dance with me! Wait, you know you want it, his breath smelling like fresh bourbon. She dropped the logs in protest. White Witch shall never dance with you! White Witch, leave! Her voice cracked as she escaped into the dark, hiding her broken face. Meanwhile, Dragon Rose and Cecil went still. With a firm grip, she led him away from the ruckus and next to her father's teepee. Hastily, she turned him to her, raised his hands to feel her cheeks once more, and they both leaned in. Their foreheads touched, they closed their eyes and kissed deeply and passionately. He wanted more of her warmth, her touch. She wanted his desire and lust. It was as if their worlds collided as they absorbed each other's embrace. I've been wanting this for a long time, Cecil. Just as from the moment we met. Yes. She wrapped her hands beside his bare neck, causing him to cringe. Suddenly, two balls landed beside them, emitting faint smoke. Bang! Bang! Each one burst open and the fog engulfed the duo, making them cough as they blinked their eyes. Apparently they were flash grenades, and the user ran through the smog, grabbed Cecil's hand, and ran with him. A few feet away, Rosa barely heard the commotion. Instead, she was wallowing in her sadness. She sat on a log near a stream as she cried. Her body was shaking, her face was soaked with tears. She never felt such torment before. Her best friend and lover was now one of them. Worthless sloven! She cursed, her throat tight and raw. Then she heard the brush moving. The moon didn't help with the thick canopy covering almost the entire starry sky. Metal plates clanged as he stepped forward. From the looks of his stature, he wasn't Cecil at all. Or was he? As the stranger stepped closer, she could hardly make him out, but his dark armor as opaque as it'll ever be. Do not be frightened, my lady. I've seen what transpired. Such a soul can be as cold and bleak as the night itself. A fair woman should never have her fragile heart broken. She had a sense of déjà vu with those familiar blue eyes, and his voice. Who are you? Dark Knight sat beside her. I'm Dameon. I was one of the former Dark Knights of Baron, but I was relieved after the king found a replacement. Then, while I was an outcast, I wound up meeting Chief Abdullah and his tribe, and because I was a formidable warrior, they took me in. But I never expected them to abandon me so soon, after he inducted Domin, then Cecil. So I understand your anguish, but you are not alone. It seems we both have something in common. Yes, and I've heard from afar there's a new king and queen, which is you? She nodded. A lot of things had changed during the coronation, and she felt sorry for the stranger. Her face glowed as she made a sudden offer. Why don't you come with me, Dameon? He looked perplexed. Truly? Yes. You may be one of our guards again. Our rules of the court are different now, and if you can prove your valiance, you'll be restored to your rightful place in no time at the kingdom. For the first time she saw the Dark Knight, or any Dark Knight, grin. Even though it was small, he gladly accepted her offer, and they had both headed straight for the Enterprise. Somewhere in the thick forest, the midget stopped running with Cecil still in tow. Removing his disguise of leaves and vines, he revealed himself. Thanks, Namingway. Thanks a lot. His head cleared as he took in fresh air. No problem, although the title Namingway seems to be highly inappropriate. That got his attention. For you see, I've chosen to stick with my first love thanks to your encouragement. I've decided to no longer live in shame with two women, especially with one more dirtier than the other. I've redeemed myself, and you inspired me to do so, clearing the shadows of doubt and seeing the light, and that's why I've helped you. So I want to call myself Redeeming Way, and make a difference helping others, and to be a more proper gentleman. Cecil was astounded and grateful of the sudden change in him, and he's glad he's settled down. Meeting was interrupted when they saw a huge ship fly away, its routers slicing the air. That's the Enterprise! Rosa, she left me. No. What have I done? Rabbit's hand brushed the side of his leg. With a somber look, he suggested, Hey, how about I take you back to Baron? I have a black chocobo waiting. I always use that little guy for all my travels. He never leaves me. Cecil tightly closed his eyes. After a few moments to clear his thoughts, he accepted. Thank you, Redeeming Way. Through the main hall, Rosa and Dameon went to the throne room. He was surprised there were two chairs rather than just one. Plus, the royal guard's perch was removed. It was fascinating how the kingdom changed before his very eyes. Even the dragoons were different without Kane around. Somehow being with Dameon made Rosa feel better, like her heart's melting off some of the ice surrounding it. I have to say, Lady Rosa, this place feels so much better than it used to be. Less corruption, less tension. It's very heartwarming. She couldn't feel any other way. Of course, Dameon, you're welcome here, and I promise you'll be back on your feet again. Hey, sorry to barge in. I just need to borrow some... Who's this guy? Is that Cecil? Sid, this is Dameon. He was once a Dark Knight serving the king here. Funny. I don't recall anyone of that name. Is he new? Dameon's face turned to disgust from that remark, until Rosa told the engineer everything. Their future plans, encounters with the Injukhal and Dragon Rose, Cecil's sudden betrayal. No doubt he was very furious. Dameon just stood there gladly letting it all go. That backstabbing bastard! And he never stood up for you? What in the world's gotten into him? He clearly lost his mind. I say by tomorrow, we will go to Tenebre and take him out of there by force. This is going well. Exhausted Cecil ran to the quarrel. He almost looked like he was ready to fall over, holding on to the door jamb. He marched up to the trio with anger as he confronted them. What's this stranger doing in his kingdom? What's this stranger doing in his kingdom? And why does he look like him? No! Don't worry. I'm here. Everyone looked at him as if he casted meteor. Cecil! You alright? I'm pretty far from being alright. You can't do this, Rosa! Falling for this doppelganger. I love you still. I've had enough. Took out his Deathbringer and stabbed it into Cecil's left arm. He held it in agony and quickly used Curia to conceal the wound. If you would have loved her, then you should never have abandoned her like that, and hooked with Dragon Rose. Cecil in his fury took out his Excalibur and charged toward him, till Rosa stepped between the clashing knights. Stop it! Both of you! But Rosa! Cecil, Dameon, I don't really have a choice, but... The paladin could hardly speak as he saw her take Dameon's side, his arm wrapped gently around her. I'm sorry. It was clear that she's chosen another man of all the misery she went through. Ashamed, Cecil slowly turned away and left, barely picking up his feet as his body was weighed down by guilt and dejection. Look, Cecil, I didn't mean to... No. You deserve another man. One that'll make you happy, and never betray you like Cain did. I've made a mess with everything for you. I'll go. He could hardly keep his head up as he tried to hide the sadness. He didn't even want the guards to notice, and when they did, he just walked by. While Dameon was offered a place to stay, Cecil grimly looked at the place he called home one more time. Now he was leaving his life behind. He was so consumed he didn't see the storm clouds overhead, or heard the rumble of thunder. He thought the only place left was the Mist Cave. At least he'll find shelter there, if it's not for the Lobo in the way. They both looked up and stared at each other with their ocean blue eyes. The wolf didn't change his face as he gave a low growl. With another snarl, it walked away. Cecil nodded as he slowly trekked into the cave, lightning briefly showing his way. The storm came ever closer. Sheets of rain started to fall. The air became more intense. Went deep into the left side. It was comfortable and spacious. He was lucky there weren't any monsters. Next to a small puddle made by the running water from the stalactites, he started to make a fire using rocks and his sword. The thunder cracked the sky, but it wasn't enough to disturb his thoughts. He lowered his head and his eyes became heavy. Rosa, please forgive me. You were right about everything. The Injukhal, Dragon Rose using me for their own gain. The chief made the prophecy. Yet I was consumed by her spell. I was a mere tool to them. What need could be so great? Our urges or no, there's no redeeming for what I've done. Cecil's eyes burned as he tried to keep his tears back. I promise, I will make amends. Which is actually one of the thoughts in the DS version. He laid next to the fire and his mouth went dry. He splashed some water to his lips and used his cape as a blanket while he rested his head. He made a silent prayer and gazed at the fire before he fell fast asleep. Whew, that was hell making this chapter, and was conflicting too. But I'm just stirring the pot. So now we've introduced Chief Abdullah and his tribe like Dragon Rose. He was also based off of Peter Pan's Big Red, but I wanted him to be like Pocahontas' father as well. Hope I didn't make the dance too provocative. Also, we've met Dameon. The concept was at first made by my older sister when we were kids. When I first played Final Fantasy IV for the SNES, she gave me this awesome name. It's stuck with me ever since. Lastly, there's Domin, which is actually a prefix for like dominatrix, dominion, that kind of stuff. Confrontation between Cecil and Dameon was a rip-off of the reboot episode Nullbot of the Bride. Lobo made a cameo here like it did in 6. What are Dameon and Domin's motives? Well, you'll have to find out next chapter. Ciao. I warned you this would be a little dramatic. So, see you all next time.